Welcome back to our Python Basics series. Today, we're going to be talking about tuples. Now, there's not as much information that we have to cover, but this should be pretty beneficial, so let's go ahead and take a look. Alright, to start out with, let's just review what we've learned about tuples so far. This data type is used to store multiple items in a single variable. They're ordered and unchangeable while allowing duplicate members. The only thing that differentiates a tuple and a list is that a tuple is immutable while a list is mutable. This means that a tuple can't change. The first thing we can look at is syntax. To create a tuple, we do the exact same thing we did with lists, but instead we use parentheses instead of brackets. We can create a variable named values and set that equal to a blank tuple for now. Within the parentheses, we can start adding the values that we want to store. For now, I'll go ahead and put Python and I'll put YouTube. Now, if we print values and we print the type of values, you'll see when we run it that it prints out our tuple as well as the data type. Very similar to lists, we can include any data type that we want within a tuple. So right now, we only have strings. To show this, we can come back up in our tuple and we can add an integer, we could add a float, we could add a list. Now if we run this, you'll see that we have all of our data types stored within the tuple, and yes, it's still a tuple. We are able to index items by their position the same way we did with strings and lists. If we come up in our code, we can show how we do this. The first item in our tuple is Python. That is in the 0th index. To reference this, we give the variable name values, and we use our brackets to say the 0th index. Now, if we come over and print this out, when we run it, you'll see that it prints out Python, which just means that's the 0th index of the values tuple. The only other thing that we should talk about is that some functions that we've already learned can carry over and be applied to the tuple data type. The first one we can talk about is the length function. If we come in our code, we can print the length of values. What this does is it returns how many items are within our tuple. So when we run it, you'll see that we have 5 items: Python, YouTube, 3, 3.5, and a list. We can also carry over the index method. As a reminder, we type in the variable name values and we say .index. We pass in a value that we would like to look up the index of within the index method. For example, we can look up 3.5. If we print values.index 3.5, you'll see that when we run it, it returns 3. This means that the first instance of 3.5 was found at the 3rd index of the tuple. If we look at the data, we can see that Python's the 0th index, YouTube is the 1st, 3 is the 2nd, and 3.5 is in fact the 3rd. The last one we're going to talk about is count. As a reminder, this is very similar to the index, but instead we say values.count. Within the parentheses, all we have to do is provide a value that we would like to look up. This will return how many times that value occurs within our tuple. I gave it the value Python, so if we come over here and we print this out, we know that Python only occurs once. And when we run it, we can see that it prints out 1 because Python does occur only once in our tuple. At this point, you may be wondering, why don't we just use a list? After the last episode, we saw all the things we could do with it. Well, the answer is that a tuple is more memory efficient, which can increase the speed of your program. Looking up values in a tuple is quicker than in a list. If you have data that you know is not going to change, you should use a tuple. That about covers the basics for working with this data type. I'll go ahead and include some helpful links down in the description below so that you can continue getting more comfortable using these. Our next episode is going to be on dictionaries. Thank you for watching, and please like, comment, share, and subscribe.